Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's event. We are here to talk about the Translational Research Acceleration Program. My name is Chad Jackson. I'm the Senior Director of Preclinical Translational Research at the Foundation Fighting Blindness. Today, we are also joined by Dr. Maureen McCall of the University of Louisville, who is a recent TRAP awardee, and she will be speaking to us about her experience a little bit later. But at the beginning, what we'll be talking about, so here's an agenda for today's meeting. We'll have an overview presented by me about the program, so it just gives us the sort of ins and outs of what the TRAP program is all about. Next, we'll have Dr. McCall talk to us about her experience of applying for the TRAP awardee and maybe give some nuances on things you need to make sure that you include in your application. After we speak, then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Please ask anything that would help clarify things for you and help you put in a better application to the foundation. And at the end, we will close the meeting. Before we start, just some housekeeping things. All the current participants' lines are in listen mode only. To ask questions, please populate either the Q&A section or the chat box. And today's session is being recorded, and after our event, it will be available at a later date for your viewing on the Foundation's YouTube page. Without further ado, we'll jump into the overview of the TRAP program. So TRAP stands for the Translational Research Acceleration Program. And the basis of this program is that inherited retinal degeneration needs a multitude of therapies in order to handle the diversity of this complex disease, since it's actually a collection of diseases. The Foundation is also interested in mitigating dry age-related macular degeneration, which also most likely will need a myriad of therapies in order to combat it as well. So that's really the foundation of the program in trying to get cures and treatments to treat retinal disease. The TRAP program is based on sort of three research priority areas, which are novel medical therapies, genetic technologies, and regenerative medicine. We'll go into each of those in a little bit more in depth over the next few slides, but in general, novel medical therapies will cover small molecules of biologics, genetic technologies, viral or non-viral based therapies, as well as gene editing, regenerative medicine, stem cells, and cellular scaffolds. But really here in the middle, if you see here the accelerator you see here, or turbocharger, is really sort of the sweet spot where the TRAP lies and what makes it different from other programs. So if you are awarded a TRAP award, you actually get put into the system of acceleration, which includes a proactive management structure. There's a hefty reporting requirement where the TRAP awardees actually report monthly, but we do lower the energy barrier on that by having a very set template in order to execute that monthly reporting. Each awardee is also given a project mentor, which provides oversight to the project. And usually the project mentors have decades of experience in industry. So it's really helped shaping the program from more research-based into a more development-based development process. There's also a TRAP Innovation Advisory Council that provides ad hoc assistance. For example, if a project is nearing regulatory stage, those individuals can weigh in on the regulatory filing package, so we make sure that it's shaped up before getting sent to regulatory agencies. Out of this accelerator, what we're hoping happens is, at the very least, that you're able to engage with entities that are looking to provide follow-on funds for the program so that the technology doesn't die or sit on the shelf. Also, the same being for partnerships. But ultimately, what we're looking to do is drive these technologies from the bench into an investigational new drug filing, hopefully establishing a new clinical trial, and hopefully one day down the road a commercial product for our constituents. So to start with the first research priority area, we have novel medical therapies. And this is really the employment of chemistry, biology, and bioengineering to formulate new therapies that mitigate inherited retinal degenerations and or dry AMD. So you see here the area of interest are small molecules, optotherapies, biologics, and we also have these alternative therapies. If your particular technology that you're pitching doesn't fit in one of the categories that you see, you would still bucket it under novel medical therapies. And the main reason that we're asking people to bucket into the 3 different research priority areas is so that when your application is reviewed, that it's reviewed by the correct experts. We would hate for someone to get a review placed in the wrong spot and not reviewed by the world's experts in these areas. The project attributes for novel medical therapy is that what we're looking for are treatments that are agnostic to the inherited retinal degeneration genotype, or even applicable, and it should be applicable. Well, no, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Let me back up. We're looking for things that are agnostic to inherited retinal disease genotype, and/or applicable to dry AMD. Like I said, we're really focusing on the 2, whether it be inherited retinal diseases or dry AMD. So it can address one of those or both would be acceptable for the program overall. And as you see that, use of almost any tools to actually determine these therapeutics is okay. So use of high throughput phenotypic drug screening. They should also directly sense and respond to the retinal state. So it should be understanding that these therapies are going to treat retinal degeneration, hopefully halt it, or even improve the state of the retina. Genetic technologies. I think this is one of the most exciting areas in medicine today, and we're looking to actually, help press the accelerator on the development of these therapies. And so this would be the manipulation or modification of retinal gene expression that alters the biological properties within the tissue, and the goal being a therapeutic solution for the disease indications at hand. And there's been a little bit of a change here in that we're looking for treatments that are agnostic to IRDs or dry AMD. However, specific gene therapies will be considered based on preclinical stage. With that being said, is that they need to be a little bit further developed and closer to clinical usage. Those would be the primary gene-specific technologies that we would be looking or interested in taking a closer look at. And lastly, we have regenerative medicine. And this is really the goal here, is to develop and regenerate the retina by using human cells, tissues, or the mixture of the 2, being the cellular human the tissue-based scaffolds that you see in development today from labs such as like Opsis Therapeutics or Soleno. Those are just 2 examples of companies working towards those ends, but we really want new and innovative approaches for regenerative medicine, and essentially reestablishing or reconstituting damaged retinal tissue with either endogenously or exogenously based therapies that can then restore retinal function and hopefully restore vision. So this is a little bit more the nitty-gritty of the TRAP funding mechanisms. Here you'll see 3 mechanisms, or in some of the criteria. First, our tried and true is FFB grants. These are what most people are going to be applying to. And these are projects funded up to $1.5 million, which is distributed over a 3-year period. And again, these are to fund everything from early stage preclinical all the way up towards IND enabling through regulatory submission of a therapeutic candidate. All projects must focus on IRDs or dry AMD or both. We are not interested in other retinal disease types such as glaucoma or dry eye. That is outside the mission of the foundation. So please, if you're thinking about applying, please focus on inherited retinal disease and dry AMD. The research should be hypothesis driven. However, if you are currently more in the development side of things and you sort of already tested out, you know your target and you know which leads you have, it's not required. It just needs to be obvious in your application of where you're at in that stage. And you also need to demonstrate how your potential technology is going to work in the clinic and in the marketplace. Who are your competitors? Who's before you? Who's behind you? As far as in the development process. That's important to know as we stage these projects. And also, applicants will have to have an intellectual property strategy. If it's not already protected, we will want to know how you plan on protecting your asset. And if it is protected, who owns that IP and who has control over the development of that asset. The next 2 are a little bit more unique and aren't often used when it comes to FFB, the TRAP funding, but they are available. One would be a cost share partnership. This would be an entity that has money available to advance a potential therapeutic, but is looking to partner with the FFB in the development of that asset. And so that would be up to $500,000 per year, distributed over a 3-year funding period. And this would be some sort of agreement between the foundation and an entity on how to develop an asset. The third one would be an advisory partnership. Those are for the organizations that may not currently be in retinal research or inherited retinal disease research, but are looking to pivot their particular technology to focus on this disease or our disease indications. So they may already have the funds to advance their technology, but maybe need more access to experts in this particular area. So they get access to our Science Advisory Council, our boards, and management and oversight of the project. So again, those are the buckets. However, I will just reiterate that the FFB grants are usually what we go forth with in the TRAP program. So just to break those out a little bit, we have 3 sort of tiers of funding when it comes to TRAP funding. TRAP 1, TRAP 2, and TRAP 3. And these really just show which level of preclinical translational research and development stage that you're at. So for TRAP 1 is more for early preclinical testing up through the development of a lead therapeutic. TRAP 2, I'm sorry, let me stop. TRAP 1, that comes with up to $900,000 of funding that's just distributed over a 3-year period. TRAP 2, it's capped at $1.5 million. That's distributed over a 3-year period. And this funds late-stage research covering like lead optimization up through IND enabling studies. And then lastly, we have TRAP 3. Now, TRAP 3 is a little bit, is a higher bar that needs to be met as far as an award, but it's a one-time infusion of capital of capped at $1 million. And this is extremely late-stage projects that need 1 or more critical experiments to activate a transition requirement. And what that means is if a individual or an organization has been talking with some people who want to invest in their technology, however, they want to see 1 more experiment. For example, if they need to conduct a GLP tox study in non-human primates at a CRO, that's what this money can be used for. It's for that one-time infusion of capital to really put a technology or asset over the over the hurdle to help it move on to its next stage of development. Eligibility criteria. Really, the main criteria is that it must be PI-led, so there needs to be an individual that is responsible for this research, and they also have to have the full backing of their institution to independently lead a research effort. That's very important that whoever oversees the program has full authority to execute all sort of the financial management, the reporting, and so forth on the project. Now, it is okay that efforts use CROs or any other sort of necessary organization or institutions in order to conduct their research. As long as you don't exceed the budget that you're awarded, we're fine with however you conduct that research. The only stopping point for us as far as the flexibility of the funding is that the foundation does not cover indirect costs for efforts. So that must be covered by some other funding that you have. Yeah, so I think that a lot of these items that I'm mentioning here are in the application materials. You can find all of that on the website directly. And if you want to follow with me directly, more than happy to, so I can direct you to exactly where you need to go. So I will mention here that in the application stage, you must submit a letter of intent. That letter of intent will then activate a review process that then we will invite people for full application. So it's something that I would encourage everyone to do is take a little bit of time, go to the website and really check out the application process more in detail in those written documents that are available. I'd like to stop here to mention that while we are very flexible in that that we not only do we fund academic institutions, but we are also okay with funding independent companies or industry, where we are okay with funding that as well. We understand that sort of innovation takes place everywhere, and we don't want to limit our funding to just academic institutions if there's also great research and development being done other places. So if you are a company and you're planning to submit a LOI for this award, please contact me and let me know so that we can review your technology and make sure it's good for a program fit. We would hate to waste anyone's time if there is not an exact alignment with our program needs. If you are invited to submit a full application after the LOI review, we will need to hold a due diligence meeting with the foundation, between the foundation and the company. And we will cover things just more about the meat of the company, such as revenue and profit and margin trends, competitors in industry, the management structure, and share ownership, all the things that are usually covered during a due diligence process. This process will be led by our venture capital arm, which is the Retinal Degeneration Fund. They will be leading this process to better understand the makeup of the company before you submit your full application, just to be sure again that everything is aligned with the needs of the foundation. Here's our selection process. If you look, starting at number 1, we published our request for applications back in April. Today, we're having our proposers day. The letter of intent that I just spoke about is due June 27th. Again, I encourage you to go to our website and check out all the information regarding the letter of intent. It's not a long process, but you will need to familiarize yourself with the details of how to submit. Once we review the letter of intent, you will then be invited for a full application submission around August 12th of this year. And then we will go into our full review of the full applications. And then in March of 2023, we'll be making our selections and notifications of who has been awarded and who has not been awarded at that time. After awards are made, we will negotiate terms and ID project mentors. We will hold a kickoff meeting, and then the research will start. So very sort of straightforward process for the TRAP review. Here are some of our recent awardees from our last application cycle. Just mention them here, just to give you a second here to look, but we have James Hurley, Rui Chin, Marius Adder, and William Beltran. And we're really excited to have these programs kicked off. Stay tuned, because we are currently in the process of planning and scheduling our kickoff meeting, which I hope I will be informing you all that will take place in July of this year. And you'll get to hear about all the exciting news from these projects. And these are just some of them. I just put these individuals here just to highlight, especially since we already have Maureen on. You'll hear a little bit about her story here in a second. I'd also mentioned that in addition to the TRAP project mentors, there's the Innovation Advisory Council. There's a lot of language here, and I don't think we need to review all of it, but just know that this is a council that provides orthogonal input into the projects, and they also are sort of weighing in on an ad hoc basis. So, for example, at the beginning of the projects, they'll review each project and really try to challenge the researchers on their particular approach, especially when it comes to adhering to industry standards. They will also bring in sort of more of a business feel to it to better understand how this will work in the marketplace. And all around, just be challenging of the project to make sure that it is on the easiest path towards regulatory approval and hopefully towards clinical utility. So that's in general what this council is providing, is sort of that 50,000-foot oversight to a project to make sure that we get the most out of the project, the most out of the funding. Here are some of the people who are currently on the advisory council. We have Nima Mayhew, Janet Cheatham, Jed Chatterson, Mark Fields, Ashwath Jayagopal, and Hema Ramkumar. This is a growing group, so we are adding individuals to this as time progresses to make sure that we have a wide breadth of expertise on the council to cover all related issues to technology development in this area. So again, here are the ultimate goals and key dates, just to sort of foot stomp this point, is that we would love, our sort of dream scenario for the TRAP program would be for all the programs after conclusion to submit a investigational new drug filing with the FDA or similar filings with other regulatory entities across the globe. Also, the establishment of a clinical trial, and then hopefully, like we said, down the road, a commercial product that deals with the needs of our constituents. Here we're listing the key dates. I'll point out again that the letter of intent is due June 27th of this year. Full application invites will be sent out August 12th. Application due dates for the full application will be October 14th. And our anticipated award date is sometime in March 2023. If you have any questions or need to contact me, please use the email that you see here. It's cjackson@fightingblindness.org. I think we can pause here for a few questions. I will take it out of presenter mode. And here, let's see if we can't start with a few questions. Before I move on to you, Maureen, I just want to get these out of the way real quick. Here we have in the Q&A, excuse me, it says, the first question we have is, what stage does a project need to be? Is early discovery stage eligible? I think that it depends on what you mean by early discovery stage. I think the simplest way to think about it is that you have to have something within your project in order to advance. It can't just be an idea. For example, you may have, you may say that receptor X, it looks like if you block receptor X with these 10 compounds or this class of compound, then you can provide some level of neuroprotection to the retina. But if you don't, if you just have the receptor, that's not good enough. What you need to have is also a class of compounds or something in order to iterate on, in order to move forward. So that's the best way I can answer that. And then that's just one example of something that would be more like a small molecule approach. However, I did mention for like gene therapies, if it's a gene therapy that is specific to a particular genetic indication, then that needs to be a bit further along. That needs to be sort of already tested in animals and has a great shot, if funding is provided, in moving it towards IND submission. The next one we have is, can the company be based outside the US? Yes, the company can be based outside the US. We are an international organization. We fund research all around the world. What are the criteria for including collaborators by the PI? Can postdocs be included as co-PIs or collaborators? Yeah, so it's really up to the PI themselves to determine who they would want to work with as co-PIs, as subs, as collaborators. It is up to the submitting PI or to really identify that. And that PI and their institution or organization then would be responsible for managing those funds. For example, if the PI wanted to do part of their experiments at a CRO, well, the funding and the agreement is between the foundation and that PI's organization. Then that CRO or that collaborator then would be a sub to the effort, and then that organization of PI would be responsible for paying and managing the research efforts of that collaborator or sub. Postdocs can be, I think that, so really, it's really up to the PI how to structure the management team and display that in the application. Hope I covered that. The next question is, I work for a company and notified FFB of our intent to submit an LOI on May 25th. There was no reply and no request to discuss prior to the LOI. What do we do? Please reach out to me and let's have a conversation about that, about the submission process. If anyone is having any confusion or any troubles submitting the LOI, please reach out to me directly and I will be sure to get those questions answered for you. How many LOIs can each PI submit? There is no limit on how many any individual can submit. We are focused on the asset only. However, I would say that be sure to make sure that your approach is different per submission. So you don't want to submit LOIs that are just minor tweaks of each other. Make sure that they independently stand on their own and are really not just iterations different. But as far as the number of LOIs you can submit, there's no limit to that. Next question is an IP approved required for the submission? No, you do not have to already have intellectual property in hand for the submission, but you do have to have a plan in order for something for the review committee to see. It is good that you can't just sort of say, well, I don't have any intellectual property protection around this. We want to at least see that you're thinking about having a plan going forward with that. Let me stop here with the questions real quick, and we'll just put a pin in this, and we'll get to the other questions in a second. I would now like to turn it over to Dr. Maureen McCall to actually give the audience just share a little bit about your experience applying for the TRAP program, and also maybe just any other thing that you see tangible to the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Chad. And it's nice to be here to help any of you with navigating the how we got to where we are. So I came about this because actually FFB and Ben Yerxa introduced me to the two prime investigators from a company. So he introduced me to Carson Schmidt and Misha Shapino, and they were from this company called Retrotrope, and that started in March of 2021. And then, and the reason that he introduced me was that Retrotrope had a small molecule that they wanted to test as a therapeutic for RP, ADRP, just generally ADRPs, or even RPs in general. This is sort of a neuroprotection agent to try to keep cones healthy. And they were looking for a partner who could do evaluations and who had a well-characterized animal model in which to do this. And so they got in touch with me, and we started to discuss, well, we started with an MTA or an NDA, whichever way you want to think about it. And then we started to talk about the pig model that we have, which is an autosomal dominant P23H transgenic pig that expresses the full-length human transgene, and also that we had some experience with several of the mouse models of the same mutation. And then after about a week or so, we really began our discussions in earnest. And what's the timeline of the degeneration of the rods and cones in our animal models, and would that be appropriate for testing their drug, and how would we do the assessments, when would we do them, and what would be the outcome measures that we would be looking for. And a huge question came up because this is something that's going to be orally dosed, and so it depends on how much the pigs weigh and how much they weigh from birth onward. And if we decide to treat really early and we treat a pregnant sow, how much does she weigh? And they weigh a lot. The pregnant sows weigh a huge amount, and so that was a pause point. Could they make enough drug? Could we get enough drug into the sow in order to do that? But we decided that that was a possibility, and that we could adequately dose their therapeutic agent. And then we had to wait for the board of directors of Retrotrope to meet, and then we took back our discussions back up so that all ended in end of May, and then we took up new discussions in June. And then at that point, Retrotrope had also been in touch with FFB again, and then we're talking to them about the TRAP program. And I can't say enough about how good Chad is with helping to get you focused on whether your product is within the TRAP program purview. And then once you get to that point, help with, what TRAP program is the best one for you. So I highly recommend discussing these issues with him before you really start to write your letters of intent and your letter and your full grant proposal. Once the RFP had been published, we started in earnest to talk about the experimental design with Retrotrope. And then we prepared a submission of a letter of intent for the deadline. And then about a month later, we were invited to write a complete proposal. So we were pretty excited about that. And like I said, along this way, we had a conference call with FFB to get advice about which of the TRAP programs was most appropriate and how to structure the application, because this was now a collaboration between an academic entity, U of L, which is where my research is housed, and Retrotrope itself. And again, they were very helpful, and using their help, that helped us to submit a letter of intent. And then as I said, we were invited to write a complete application, and we had about 2 months to get that together. Because this was a collaboration with Retrotrope, we had lots of emails and Zoom calls. We had the input of several of the people from Retrotrope in terms of how to explain the technology, how to, and that kind of thing. And I was there to make sure that it was, that I could understand what was written, so that the reviewers would understand what was written. So, a lot of back and forth between very, very technical chemical descriptions, and then how do we bring that down so that people really actually understand what it is that we're doing. And then along the way, Karsten had already had a stable of collaborators, and we pulled in 2 or 3 of these people who were really excited about the project, and they came on as collaborators. And the idea is that the money would flow through the PI and then to the other collaborators. But they didn't come on as subcontracts. But these collaborators were really important because they were crucial to being able to assay how the structural and functional effects come about. My lab's good at determining the structure and function of the retina. And then these other labs were much more, their expertise was in looking at the distribution of the product and how it was interacting with some of the proteins in the cells themselves. So that was all good. And then in January of this year, we met again with FFB because they wanted to discuss aspects of the technology transfer, and then the relationship in terms of IP between Retrotrope and U of L. And that was pretty exciting because that meant we were still in the running. And then we got final word that the application had been accepted, and at the ARVO meeting. And so there's a couple of things that FFB and the company are doing, and we expect to get a notice of grant award in the next couple of weeks or month. So that's my experience. And I think the only thing, so the FFB's site is very good about what it is that you want to include in your letter of intent, and also in terms of the grant. One thing that I would say that would be useful when you're submitting your grant is to have a paragraph that explains why the grant is taking the mechanism that it's taking, trap 1, trap 2, trap 3, etc. I think that helps to put that in. It leaves out the guessing for the reviewers, and in retrospect, we should have included that as a paragraph. Other than that, I think that, as I said, the site's very straightforward, and the staff is all very helpful in terms of getting things uploaded. I had some trouble. Layla Kenny was just great with helping me get my grant up and loaded on the day that it needed to be submitted. So I can't say enough about the support that you get and all of the advice that you get from FFB along the way. So I'd be happy to take questions too.
All right, Maureen, thank you so much for that. It was really great and really in depth, and I think that that will probably serve a lot of people on this call very well from your information and guidance. I appreciate that. We already had some pre-staged questions. I think most of these are for me right now, Maureen, but for those of you on the call, please, if you have any direct questions for Dr. McCall, please ask them and I will relay them. It is now open for the rest of the time. We have about, I believe, like 25 minutes left for the call. And we're going to use most of this time for answering any of your questions. So please continue to populate the question and answer section, and we'll try to get to these questions one by one here. So the next question is the LOI confidential, or would it require a separate CDA to be set up for confidentiality? And I believe a couple people had that about confidentiality. So I'll try to answer that in more of a blanket way. So let me just take a step back and maybe give a little bit more granularity on the review process. So each of the research priority areas that I mentioned, we have committees set up for their review committees set up for each of those research priority areas that are a mix of scientific experts. And all of our science advisory board has signed CDAs with the foundation. So they have, they sort of have taken that confidentiality oath, and that any information that they receive during the review process, whether it be a LOI or full application, they will make sure they keep complete confidentiality. Also, we are very big on if there's any overlap or conflict of interest, that we will identify that person and exclude them from the process to make sure that if there's any conflict of interest, that we are still on the up and up, and that person will either recuse themselves, or they will be notified that they are not to be a part of that review process where there is a conflict of interest. However, if you are a company, you may have your own policies when it comes to confidentiality and as far as paperwork from the legal side. The best thing I can tell you right now is please reach out to me and we can talk more in depth about your submission and the types of paperwork that you all may need to have in place before letting go or being able to show some of the information that you have on your side, especially if you're a company. So please, again, if any questions or need more details or clarification, please reach directly out to me in order to have a further discussion. The next question is, can you have collaborators outside of your institution? Most definitely. I mean, that's the simple answer, is that please collaborate with whoever you think can help you execute your work. And that's as plainly as I can put it. Maureen, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, so the collaborators that we put together for ours, one's a lab in Germany and the other is a lab at UT Austin. So you can go international as well as national, as well as inside your institution.
Okay, thank you. And the next question, is RP included for under our category of IRD? Most definitely, RP is included. Some other ones just off the cuff would be Stargardt's disease, Usher syndrome, achromatopsia, rod cone dystrophies. The list goes on. The best thing I can say for maybe a full list of what the foundation is interested in, please visit our website, and you can really, just reading some of the things that we have there, or just information, can really help the audience understand better of sort of the breadth of what we're concerned with. And if you have any questions, again, reach out to me and I can get you a more direct answer, a more complete answer. Now, the next question are there any specific terms that apply to companies versus research institutes? And the answer to that is yes. There are different award terms for companies versus research institutions. If you would like to know more details about that, please send me an email and I can actually get you the specifics of those terms. I think it would be a little bit unfair to kind of cover those now because they are very detailed in nature. And I don't think I would do it justice by sort of talking through each of those points. But at a very sort of high level, I can just say that for research institutions, we're really focusing them on development. So some of the things, protections we put around our grant award are meant to make sure that once our funding ends, that we ensure protections around the technology and that we can continue to move it forward through the development process, even if someone doesn't choose to do so. While we won't, and I will say this up front, if there's any questions, the foundation isn't looking to own anyone's IP. The IP stays with the institution or with the person or whoever currently has it. What we're looking to do is just make sure that we can continue to invest in it and push the technology forward so it reaches our constituents. On a company basis, there's less restrictions, but what the company will have to do is the financial piece of the award will be managed by our retinal degeneration fund. Therefore, a further conversation, as I said before, will need to be had with the foundation if you're a company applying, because the terms do somewhat alter compared with academic institutions. How to define faculty position? Does research scientists count for a faculty position? The main way to distinguish whether or not you're able to accept an award is that, are you able to independently conduct research at your institution or organization, meaning that you have signatory authority to accept the award. That's the main thing. So if you're not allowed to sign basically the award terms or contract, for lack of a better term, then you will not be eligible to participate. However, if the institute, for example, if academic institution has granted you allotted space, access to equipment, and giving you signatory authority to accept a grant, then yes, you can apply. I would check, the best thing you could do, I believe, and Maureen, correct me if I'm wrong, is check with your sponsored research office at your university to see if you have that level of authority to actually conduct independent research.
Yeah, even the chair of your department might know.
Okay, check with your chair. The next question is, how many projects are invited to full application? We don't have a limit on, we don't have a cutoff at that stage yet. So during the LOI process, what we're really looking are for those really exciting projects that have a clear path toward clinical utility in regards to the stage that they're currently at. We understand that if you have an early preclinical project, that most likely, it's probably not going to probably get to IND submission. However, what our hopes are that the program and the people around, we can really help get it as close as possible. But in saying that, we are not limiting the amount of full applications that we will request, because we really want to focus our efforts on the technology itself. So if, for example, if we get 50 LOIs submitted, we're not going to only invite 20. If 25, or we're not going to only invite 10 or something. We don't have a number cutoff at that point. What we're looking to do is really say, what are the really exciting projects that we want to hear more about through a full application process? The next question is, can you please say more about the cost and schedule section of the LOI? What should that look like? Great question. What we're looking to do is just, and it doesn't really need to be long. What I would say is that since this is a project, or especially if you're in in any setting, whether or not you're a company or in an academic setting, what does your development process kind of look like? We really want to challenge you to say, okay, this is going to be a 3-year project. What can you accomplish in the first year, second year, and third year? And what is it going to cost? Because it may be different. For example, you may be in a place where the first year you're doing a genetic technology. In the first year, you're really doing a lot of just assay-based work, and you're really trying to refine the AAV that you plan on using. But in the last year, you're looking to actually test this in a large animal model. So the cost of the two is going to be much different, and the time it takes to do the two is going to be much different. So we really want to know on a very basic level, is what are you planning on doing and how much is it going to cost, and make the two match up. So that's what we mean by cost and schedule is really just that. The best way I can sort of think, a very easy way to do it is think about developing a Gantt chart that you can clearly show what each step of your research program will entail, and just have a very brief description of each of those processes, and then have a cost associated with it. And then of course a total. And then you're totaling everything up from salary, reagents, travel, things like that. Everything that can be covered under the budget within that calendar year and what you plan on executing during that calendar year. If what I'm saying doesn't make sense, please reach out to me. We can have a quick virtual call so I can actually show you what I mean by that.
I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
So, you know, in the LOI, in my experience, they're not looking for a detailed budget, but you know, a general idea of how much things are going to cost and what the cost per year is going to be. And my section on that was very short. And in fact, I provided timelines for the experiments that were in detail, but the summary of how much things were going to cost was very short, at least for the LOI. Now, when you get to the full grant, then there's a full detailed project budget description as well as a budget justification.
Right. Thank you for that, Maria. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So, and the reason we're asking for cost of schedule is that we want to make sure that you're thinking about the execution of the project and that it's reasonable. For example, if you say, oh, we're going to do, I don't know, I'm sorry, I need to exaggerate here, but we're going to inject, 100 pigs and look at all these results in 2 months. It's kind of like,
it's not going to happen.
You're not, like that's not enough time. And that's what we'll challenge you on. But if we really understand that you have a certain research project and the timelines and the costs match, it gives us more confidence that you've intimately thought about what you want to do in your project. Okay, hopefully we answered that question for you. The next question is, are there any specific terms that, I'm sorry, we've already answered that one. The next question is, how many TRAP grants at each level does the FFB plan to fund this cycle? We don't have a set amount as far as each level, really. What we do is we encourage as many people as possible to have exciting technologies to apply. And then however it sort of shakes out in the review process, that's who we go with. We are focused completely on the technology, especially those ones who have great promise of actually reaching the clinic and impacting the lives of our constituents. So that's what we're focused on. So if they're all sort of, let's say they're all TRAP 2s, and we'll basically max out our budget and try to get as many of those TRAP 2s as possible with the budget that we have. And that's sort of the case. But usually what it breaks out is a certain mix of across the board between TRAP 1, 2, and 3. The next question, give me 1 second. I need to look in the chat box.
There's a question about how long the LOI is. And the instructions for the LOI are very clear in terms of how many words and page limits. So it's very prescribed. It's very easy to follow.
Agree with that. So I encourage you again to go download well, 2 things. Go download the guidance, but then also log into JUMP itself and start just sort of playing around in our submission portal to see if you have any hangups or anything. There's a question here that sort of dovetails with that can we upload more than 3 figures? Not in the LOI stage. We're really capping that. It's not meant to be a long document. What I would encourage you to do is that if it really needs to be those wow pieces of data that really would give the reviewer that notion that the technology has some sort of real chance of moving forward. If more money is infused to it, that asset can really make an impact in the field. So I wouldn't give too much background information unless it's key background data that you need to show that technology works, but something that really shows that either you're protecting the retina, that you're augmenting it genetically to produce a protein that is necessary, that you're augmenting a particular biological process that provides like neuroprotection or something. That's the wow data that you want to show within those 3 figures. We're really trying to keep the LOI process short. So give us the highlights of those critical wave tops of your idea that can give the reviewers enough insight that you'll be invited for a full application.
And I provided 1 figure in terms of what Chad's just said. And then I used my other 2 figures as the timelines, the detailed timelines of how we would assess, when we would assess, and all that kind of thing. So I think that was, for me, that was a really good use to show that we'd really thought through, even at the level of the letter of intent, how this whole thing would work.
Sure. Actually, I think our VP of Science and Awards is on, and she's put some valuable, who is Dr. Amy Lassiger, has put some valuable information in the chat box, and it really speaks to like what is the typical success rate. Just to know that the FY23 budget for the TRAP program is just over $7 million. So depending again on those TRAP categories, how this breaks out, we're looking to maximize. We're looking to get all that money off of our books and into the researchers' hands for research and development purposes. So usually per year, Amy's pointed out that we roughly fund anywhere from 4 to 6 new awards across the 3 TRAP areas. However, again, we're not prescribed, we're not dedicating any level of funding to each of those. If they're, like I said, if they're all TRAP 2 or at the top of the list, we will try to go with those and push those along. Mark has a question here. Will this presentation be available on the website? Great question, Mark. This presentation will not be on the website. However, well, you know what? We will be able to host this on the website. It'll be a link to the foundation's YouTube page. But I believe you may be able to play it from our website as well, as I think the video will be embedded. Right now, okay. Also, everyone on the call, Leila has put a link in the chat that will take you directly to the TRAP webpage. If you want to go there, there are 3 documents there. We have the LOI guidance, we have the TRAP overview section, as well as the application material, application instructions for you. So if you're looking to get a direct sort of link there without having to search all around the foundation's webpage, please go to the link that Leila has placed in the chat box. I will say some other things. We have about 7 minutes left here. I think we've answered most questions now. Keep the questions coming. We're here to answer them. One thing maybe I'll point out, maybe Marina and I can talk about a little bit, or maybe other things that really stand out in a TRAP application. I think the #1 thing that comes to mind are animal models. You want to make sure that the models that you know, not just animal models, but the data that you're collecting and the model systems that you're using have relevance to regulatory filing. You want to make sort of what I would challenge each applicant to do is think about what information would a regulatory agency such as the FDA or EMA want to see in order to approve, excuse me, an IND filing. You know, and that's really sort of the lens you want to look through. You want to start working from that part backwards to really understand what type of data you need to generate, or where you're currently at and what gaps exist in order for you to do those types of experiments. If animal models don't exist, I would just challenge you to reach out to the other leaders in the field who are doing it. I mean, reach out to Dr. McCall or reach out to other people who have worked vast experiments in IRD or dry AMD animal models and get their opinion on what you're trying to do, and maybe they can provide some insight to you about which approach to take. I think we have another question here. Can you expand a little on the advisory partnership track? Sure. So the advisory partnership track, like I said, that we create this, in general, we create the TRAP funding mechanism to be as flexible as possible. If I could try to answer your question as an example, it would be for if a company, if there was a small startup company and they had an asset that they're currently using for cancer research. But someone reads in a publication that the particular target also had maybe been shown to have effects in retinal degeneration. And that startup company was looking to maybe pivot a bit or expand their pipeline and maybe include retinal degenerations as well. They may already have enough capital to pursue that, but they don't have the scientific expertise to really know how to start that research. So then they would come to the FFB, and that would be the advisory partnership that we could have our science advisory board and our other mentors and innovation council take a look at the asset, understand the research behind it, and then start to guide that organization toward expanding or pivoting their technology toward inherited retinal degenerations. So that's what I mean by the advisory partnership track. There may be no money exchanged during this part. It just really depends on what that relationship looks like for between that organization and the foundation. Hopefully that answered your question. If not, continue to populate the Q&A section. Marie, is there anything else that maybe we could lend to as important? I think you highlight good about making sure that it's clear about what trap section. Maybe I could also add that I think one of the things that many of our constituents look for is like, once your project ends, then what? Will it be an IND finally? What is it going to look like for them? Excuse me, will there be a potential clinical asset? Will this move the field forward? So I would say that if you can sort of weave somewhere in your application just a little bit of that narrative, and not much. I mean, basically saying that, if we are successful, this is what it's going to mean for this technology. This is what it's going to mean for the field of retinal biology, retinal disease, and whatnot. Maureen, would you agree with that, or would you?
Yeah, I would, and I think one thing that that I usually try to do, regardless of what the where the application is going, is I always have a what we will learn section, and as Chad said, it's pretty short, and in particular for this kind of an award, what is it going to mean clinically? So you're going to find X, and that is going to translate into some aspect of patient selection, outcome selection, blah, 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 so that it's clear where the data will fit into the IND filing. So the IND filing is always about, what are the outcome measures? What's the patient selection? All of those individual things that are really important. And what I've learned is that that's important to tell the reviewers so that they have the perspective of what you think the whole thing's going to come down to and distill into.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. We have a follow-up question to the advisory partnership question, and it is there any small amount of funding for proof of concept for the project available? And as this entity has limited funding, through the advisory partnership, no, there is not funding available. Therefore, you would need to apply either probably to an FFB grant. So you would be looking at applying for a Trap 1, Trap 2, or Trap 3. Those are the tried and true mechanisms for which and how the foundation distributes its funds, are through those granting mechanisms. So, and you still, even with applying to the different traps, you have access to our science advisory board, to mentors, to any of the ad hoc counsel that you would need in order to help develop your asset. So they're not, the only thing about the advisory partnership, really where you put in this, because it's not really a granting mechanism, it's more just of a partnership in for the fact of exchange of information for some. But with the granting mechanism, that's where the funds are distributed through. Okay, well, it seems that we're right on time. It is noon here on the East Coast. Dr. McCall, thank you so much for being a part of our FFB family and for joining this webinar today. I truly appreciate it. I'd also like to thank everyone who joined the webinar. Please apply, let all your friends know, let all your colleagues know that we want to see a lot of people apply for this thing so we can really get these technologies rolling. Thank you for your time, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Take care.
Bye, thank you.